Welcome to the participant information briefing for the second combined functional exercise as part of this year's 2018 Seabrook exercise cycle. Having heard no real negative feedback after the first participant briefing, it seems as though this is the preferred way to do these briefings for a lot of people. So unless we hear anything to the contrary, these will likely be done in a pre-recorded fashion moving forward. Nonetheless, if you have any questions or if this is the first briefing you're turning into and it doesn't seem ideal, please contact either your field representative or any of the staff in rep planning and give us your feedback so we can make any necessary adjustments. Now, jumping right into it, the first thing I'll draw your attention to again is just the WebEOC title at the bottom of the screen. This will be the default on the 14th, so we're hopeful that eliminates any of the potential WebEOC confusion right out of the gate. Just a quick recap on the dates as we basically hit our halfway point in the cycle. We started back with a joint workshop and tabletop on October 18th out at the DES facility on Pease. Then we had our first CFE back on Wednesday, November 29th, with FEMA only being partially represented. Our second and final CFE will be next Wednesday, February 14th, and our evaluated exercise being April 4th. Know that FEMA will only be partially represented next Wednesday as well, but we're expecting full FEMA staffing for our evaluated in April. So just a few quick assumptions, artificialities, and exercise rules for the 14th. As is always the case, don't fight the scenario. Any real-world emergency would obviously take precedent over drill play, and all of our communications must begin and end with "this is a drill." Know that there are no trick questions or hidden agendas. The scenario will unfold as it's written, and some players will naturally just be busy at times while others are not. Know that it's really hard to completely eliminate that, given the size of the drills we do in support of Seabrook Station. Understanding that the execution of people's responsibilities often occurs at different times is essential. The scenario has been written to get everyone involved, just you can never have everybody involved at the same time. So now let's take a moment to talk about the 6 categories of evaluation criteria that FEMA looks at, and how that could potentially translate into a redemonstration request. So as you can see, the 6 categories of evaluation criteria are listed here. What's important to know is just that there are subcategories for each of these 6 criteria. So let's take emergency operations management, for example. There are subcategories that deal specifically with alert and notification, the notification of staff, ensuring that you have 2 communication systems available for redundancy, and also direction and control. If a FEMA evaluator found that a player's response activity was not demonstrated or performed adequately, before an issue can be officially noted, sometimes the opportunity for redemonstration has to be given to that player. Time may be afforded for on-the-spot training, consultation with the state's controller, or even review of job aids and supporting documentation. This is just a reminder that throughout the rest of the exercise cycle, including the evaluated, know that you may be asked to redemonstrate certain activities, and that's because each of these 6 categories has subcategories, and some of those subcategories allow for redemonstration, which is really a good thing, especially if you felt things didn't go perfectly on your first attempt. Now, as for the roles and responsibilities, this is very straightforward. Going from the top to the bottom, players are once again the people who carry out response activities. Controllers are the go-between for the players and any FEMA evaluator, and then observers are anyone who doesn't fall into the first 2 categories, 1, because they're not associated with any sort of response, or 2, they're not officially documenting anybody's response. Now, perhaps what's most important, and the reason for the participant briefing in general, comes down to both the weather forecast and the initiating conditions for the utility. So we're going to play real time, real date again. Wednesday, February 14th is Wednesday, February 14th. Conditions are once again going to be pretty seasonal. Schools are in session and student pickup has begun. The reactor is running at 100% and there are not yet any issues from a utility point of view. And then for the spent fuel pool temperature, for that more technical and dose assessment information, is going to be 200 degrees after just about 34 hours. So I know it was discussed during the participant briefing for CFE 1, but going over wind direction again, especially how it's identified on the 300B form, is worthwhile. So as you can see, the full 360-degree circle surrounding Seabrook is here on the screen. Seabrook being that small little black dot between the solid and dotted blue line. The dotted line on the right side of the map identifies the location of 85 degrees as listed in our initiating conditions. Now the solid line to the left of that black dot is where the plume would go according to our initiating conditions if there were a radiological release. And perhaps the most important piece of information you need to remember relates to how this is identified on the 300B form. Wind direction always comes from a certain degree on this map, never going towards. So the last thing before we finish up is just a few reminders for players. First, there will be no pre-staging or self-activation, just like we said for the first CFE. However, that has the same exception or caveat that it did in November. If you are assigned to work at the EOF, IFO, or JIC, the Emergency Operations Facility, the Incident Field Office, or the Joint Information Center, you are asked to respond to that particular site at a 10 minutes to the hour ratio. So we're asking any person assigned to those locations to be in the area of 108 Corporate Drive by 0840. Also, as we've discussed previously, please do not park in the front of the building. That is a utility-owned building, and the station personnel respond to that off-site location real-time, which is often in waves or increments. So the last thing we want to do is take up their limited parking spaces. Now, specifically for the 17 EPZ communities, if any of you receive a SimCell call, please make sure that call is forwarded to public inquiry at 603-227-0002. In terms of your EOCs being set up, remember there's a difference between reporting that you're activated versus reporting that you're operational. Activated is when your EOC opens, and operational is when your EOC is capable of coordinating the given response. Now for RADEF officers, on the 14th you must brief at least 2 emergency workers for the drill. Also, the new 2018 RADEF DVDs were just issued over the past few weeks, so those are good to use both for this exercise and for the evaluated in April. And regardless of wind direction, you must provide a RADEF briefing and issue equipment. Think about it. If the wind changes, you don't want to be playing catch up, so that's why it's been our process to issue the dosimetry and provide the briefing regardless. Now for instruments, remember the only background meter for your EOCs is the small black Radalert 100. There is no other meter, and the yellow meters are not considered backups. Please don't even mention that you have other radiological equipment. The 777 transportation kits that are often referred to are used for a completely different purpose, and they're calibrated on a completely different time frame, so they would not even be used in a Seabrook event. In regards to traffic impediments, each EPZ community must both divert and clear their impediments, not just one or the other. And for this drill, there will be one impediment that lasts throughout the exercise. And lastly, just remember to follow your checklists and your job aids. You have them available, so there's no need to make anything up. Think about it this way. Pilots use checklists for every flight, no matter how many times they've flown previously. So it doesn't matter how many times you've done these exercises. It's the same idea here. So that really concludes the participant information briefing for this second drill coming up on the 14th. We want to thank you all for tuning in, and if you have any questions, once again, don't hesitate to contact either your field representative or any of the staff in rep planning. The phone number for the IPOC is laid out here for you, and your questions can funnel down from there, or rep@dos.nh.gov is the official rep planning email, and you can submit your questions there. Thank you all very much, and have a good rest of your day.